Hello, everyone. I'm Paris Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to 12 O'Clock High, a podcast on business leadership with Tom Fox, hosted by Richard Lummis.
This is Tom Fox. Richard Lummis is on assignment this week, so I am visiting with Amy Barnard-Bahn, a well-known compliance and leadership expert, to take a look at 5 of the top leadership failures and scandals from 2019. This special series on 12 O'Clock High is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network. Thanks so much for listening. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back again with Amy Barnard-Bahn for part 5 of our 5-part exploration of some of the top corporate governance and leadership failures from 2019. Today, we're going to end with a pure FCPA case, and that is the Swedish telecom company Ericsson, which settled in Q4 of 2019 with either the first or second largest FCPA settlement, depending on how you count the Petrobras settlement, of $1.06 billion, that's with a B, fine and penalty. So, Amy, what struck you about this case, and why should a Swedish company be on our list?
Well, gosh, this one has such shockingly simple bribe schemes, and I know you've blogged on this extensively as well, and just an appallingly weak control system and compliance culture. And it's been going on for so long, 17 years, right? They finally settled 5 countries, and we already know, and so you would have thought that compliance would have been on the lookout, because telecom is the number one industry for FCPA, right, Tom?
Don't take our Houston crown away. Sorry. The crown of Houston, the FCPA epicenter of the world, Houston, Texas.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad to see that, Tom, my birthplace. So sorry that it's such an ignominious crown, but yeah.
Now, wait a minute. Are you from Houston?
I was born there, yeah.
So was I.
Well, we'll have to talk about that. All my family's still there in Texas and spread all over. But so we'll get to talk about Houston. But yeah, this one, I'll be curious to see how they try to rebuild this. They knew or should have known, right, that telecom is ripe with opportunity for bribe schemes. It's a distributed business. You are trying to gain it's volume business. You have to get into the weeds in all kinds of countries where a cell phone is how people live and run their businesses, third world countries. And so third world countries, red flag, right? The Transparency International runs a really nice map of countries where you need to be careful. And so just red flags all over this one, Tom, in terms of what you should be doing. I think in terms of a compliance structure and controls, and of course, knowing how the FCPA has been one of the top moneymakers for the DOJ for years. So this one just surprised me that, where was compliance?
So a couple of things around telecom. What we have seen is the Department of Justice engaged in industry sweeps. And really the first industry sweep was energy. Then we went to pharma. Then we went to tech, then we went to private equity, and now we're on telecom. And you're absolutely right. Telecom is rife for potential FCPA exposure because so much of what they do, not so much, all of it's licensed. So there's always a government touch point. And in fact, I think the last time I looked at it, 4 of the top 6 FCPA enforcement actions are now telecom cases. So for any telecom company, for any practitioner in telecom, this case presents the glaring example that you are going to be directly in the government sites if you're in telecom, and you need to go in and scrub your operations as much as you can. But you also hit on a point that it's the settlement documents in the form of the deferred prosecution agreement and other documents not really identify any of the specific individuals involved, but it seemed to me that there was very senior level involvement in this case, and that an entire culture of corruption pervaded the company. How could a U.S.-based monitor, if indeed they select a U.S.-based monitor, begin to think through changing the culture at a company like Ericsson, where, as you also noted, 17 years of bribes and corruption had occurred.
Yeah, well, I was intrigued by the report that they issued on December 7th, where they promised to invest and to implement the best methods and systems available, which isn't very specific. There's a whole slide deck actually that's publicly available online from the CEO's chief legal officer and the CFO. What I noticed both in that report, Tom, in looking for signs of how are they going to rebuild, and in the lack of getting full credit for their self-disclosure, which we could go into as well. They only got 15% instead of the full 25% that they could have gotten, leads me to believe that because the legal officer has been the one that's been issuing proclamations and statements, this kind of has the hallmarks to me of a legal-driven defensive response without, a lot of compliance or certainly ethics talk. There's no ethics language, if you will, that I hear in their response at all. So that's another red flag to me around how far are they really going to go to remodel this culture. As you and I both know, there's a long debate in our compliance community around, to whom should the compliance and ethics officer report. And in an organization where you've got a chief legal officer who gets the role of compliance and the independence that it needs to do its job in doing the right thing, as opposed to doing the legally defensible thing, it can work fine. I've worked under both structures. But in this structure, I tell you I'm concerned. I'll be very interested to see if the monitor, for example, can persuade or insist that the company has an independent compliance officer based on what I see. Because it's not in the slide deck, Tom. And they fired their CEO in 2016, I guess, in a reactive attempt, perhaps to get away from some of the corruption suspicions that they hired Hans Vestberg in July 2016. But that doesn't seem to have done much with the settlement, because I don't think that changed the culture, because they didn't disclose two matters that were found out anyway. It seems foolish to me. Why would you not disclose that you knew of stuff going on? And then they failed to timely remediate some of their other work. So, I'm frankly surprised they got the 15%.
So, Amy, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time, but this has been just a ton of fun going through these cases, talking with you, getting your perspective. This is now, I think, the second year we've done this, and I hope we can do it again a third year. And maybe what we should consider is maybe an interim series of podcasts at the 6-month mark to see if we can assess if anything's really changed in any of these companies.
That would be great. I mean, look, more than anything, I think you and I both want all these companies to succeed. It hurts employees, shareholders, the economy, communities when companies fail, right? So each year I try to be optimistic, but it's always sobering, Tom, given this week and what we've talked about, to see some of the greats and some of the challenges that they're facing. So I would love to check in 6 months.
This is Paris Fox again. We hope you enjoyed this episode of 12 O'Clock High, a podcast on business leadership with Tom Fox. If you enjoyed the show, please go to iTunes and rate the podcast. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this 5-part series on leadership and corporate failures from 2019 that I did with Amy Barnard-Bahn. I hope you'll join myself and Richard Lummis again next week on 12 O'Clock High when we begin our annual February review of leadership lessons from Oscar-winning Best Pictures. Thanks again for listening. 12 O'Clock High is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio.